Feigenholz. Current state law restricts abortions for Medicaid patients and state employees, and this is what you intend to change. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Do you believe that it's appropriate to restrict abortions in any case?
No.
Okay. So just to be clear, a mother who is pregnant with triplets could reduce via abortion one or more of those babies, even if they are healthy. Is that correct?
Representative, can you ask questions about the bill that's in front of you, please?
This absolutely has to do with this bill. Could you just answer that question? Would that abortion procedure be covered?
No.
Under what grounds? On what grounds would the state or the Medicaid system deny that abortion? You just said that there shouldn't be restrictions for any reason.
You asked my opinion on the first question, not what was in the bill.
Okay.
My response was my opinion, not what is in law or in the bill.
Okay. If your bill were to become law, would an abortion that what's called a reduction abortion from triplets down to a single or twins down to a single, would that be covered if your bill were to become law?
Representative, the Illinois statutes already has laws around viability, and it is already defined.
Representative, in respect to...
This is about pre-viability abortion care. That is what House Bill 40 addresses.
Okay, so if your bill were to become law, and we're trying to remove the restrictions that currently exist, I'm asking, would one of those restrictions be a reduction abortion from triplets down to a single or twins down to single?
I'm going to repeat my answer. This is a bill about pre-viability. It doesn't address what you are asking me.
To the body, it would be covered. It would be covered. Would your bill include abortions for reason of sex selection?
That is not the intent of this legislation.
Representative, I understand that's not your intent, but if your bill were to become law...
This is about pre-viability abortion care, Representative. Anything, the only terminations that are permitted after viability they're called a delivery. So,
Representative, I have 4 children, and we have many members of this body who are parents as well. We found out the sex of our children before they were viable. So I'm asking again, would your bill, if it were to become law, would it cover an individual who goes in and says, I want an abortion because I am unhappy with
this
the
bill
sex
makes
of the fetus?
no changes. I think I answered a similar question when Representative Ford was talking about how this is the amendment we just adopted clarifies that there is no change in current law.
Okay, Representative, I know that abortions are accessible right now if the individuals decide to pay for it on their own. But if your bill were to become law, this would be a procedure covered by Medicaid for virtually any reason pre-viability, which could include sex selection. That's what I'm trying to...
This bill does not change how abortion is covered in Illinois currently.
Okay. To the body, if an individual who is on Medicaid wants an abortion due to the sex of the fetus, of the child, we would be covering that, and in addition, state employees. Representative, according to the United Nations Population Fund, today, somewhere between 100 and 200 million women across Asia are missing, and many others are missing in Eastern European countries as well, largely the result of gender-biased sex selection, a form of discrimination. Further, in this United Nations report, it also indicates that in the United States and other industrialized countries, this is an issue. There was a 2011 Gallup poll This was the question. If Americans could have only one child, which would you prefer, a boy or a girl? 40% answered that they would prefer to have a boy versus 28% preferred that they would have a girl. And these numbers are similar to a poll that was done in 1941 to show the consistency. 38% back then preferred to have a boy, 24% preferred to have a girl. Representative, do you believe it's in the best interest of the state of Illinois to require that taxpayers pay for abortions for the reason that the couple would prefer a boy to a girl?
This bill doesn't change current statute, Representative, and
Representative,
I refuse to answer that question. You're being so dilatory.
To the body, we're talking about an expansion of taxpayer funding for Medicaid, taxpayer funding of abortions for Medicaid and for state group and health insurance. Just to remind the body, current practice is that right now, current law, we cover abortions in the case of the life of the mother, the health of the mother, which is pretty broad, rape and incest. What we're debating right now would be an expansion for virtually any reason, including the reasons that I cited. And the representative's failure to answer those questions, I understand that's not her intent, but that is the result of what would happen. I would like to go to the bill. This is a sobering moment in the history of this body. Representative Ford, you alluded to the debate about the death penalty, and I appreciate that you brought that up, and you and I have talked about that over the past couple of weeks. That was a similarly controversial bill. It involved the state's role in taking human life. Some of you here today, some of you who are sponsoring this bill, you voted to abolish the death penalty. The Center on Wrongful Convictions contributed to this effort. There was a powerful moment that happened in 1998. There was a forum during which they had over 30 former death row inmates, now exonerated, who stood up in front of a podium. They walked up to a microphone and one after another stated, "My name is blank. If the state had its way, I'd be dead today." I want you to think about that. If the state had its way, I'd be dead today. We are repulsed by the thought of the state sending an innocent man or woman to his death or her death. What are we doing here then? Now, many of those exonerated had committed lesser crimes, but they were innocent of the charges that had sent them to death row. I want you to please tell me, what is the crime that these unborn children have committed that they would deserve to be discarded, not recognized as persons? They're just medical waste. Is it that some were unplanned? Is it some were inconvenient? Is it because some were born to a poor family or would be born to a poor family? What about the millions of those children who are born under those same circumstances? Some in this General Assembly have stated on previous bills that they were born under these same circumstances. Ronald Reagan once said, "I notice that everyone who supports abortion has already been born." But no, we're not going to recognize that right for those who can't speak today. They're too small, they're too weak. And besides, 7 U.S. Supreme Court judges said it was legal, so that must make it okay. Just like they said in 1857 when they declared that former slave Dred Scott was not a legal person either. Or in 1927 when 8 justices legalized the forced sterilization of those the government deemed unfit to reproduce, quote unquote, for the protection and health of the state. Planned Parenthood is celebrating 100 years. This bill would fulfill the aims of eugenicists like Henry Goddard and Margaret Sanger, who supported forced sterilizations and, as a last resort, abortion. LaShawn Ford brought up this point, and I'm glad he did. 13% of the population is African American, yet 34% of the abortions are in that demographic. In some cities, there are more African American children who are aborted than born. That is a travesty of justice. A yes vote today would fulfill the eugenicist dream of a better America, devoid of any undesirables or anyone they believed would be a drain on society. And believe me, I'm getting those emails just like you are from constituents who say vote yes or vote no. And I respond to the yes. I respond both. But those who told me I should vote yes, I replied back my reasons, and I got some replies back. If you're really a fiscal conservative, you would vote for this, because it's far less expensive to abort than to pay public assistance for the next 18 years. How callous. If the state had its way, I'd be dead today. There's an endless list of individuals who would not be here today if Representative Feigenholz's bill had been law over the past decades. Lives have been saved because of current practice. Most of us watched the Olympics last summer. Did you watch Simone Biles? World champion gymnast. She was a child of poverty and misfortune. She was born to a poor, drug-addicted, and alcoholic single mother. She bounced in and out of foster care for 5 years. Finally, she was adopted by her grandparents. Today, she's an Olympic champion. If the abortion industry had had its way, she would never have made it to the podium. She never would have seen the light of day. She wouldn't even have a name. Each one of us is made by God, and we are one of a kind. Every life matters. Mother, father, child. Life goes on. Steve Jobs is another example. His birth mother was a college student and had an unplanned pregnancy. Steve Jobs said in his autobiography, "I wanted to meet my birth mother and to thank her because I didn't end up as an abortion. She was 23 and went through a lot to have me." You know what? Sometimes unwanted children defy expectations. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they just have a normal existence. But every life is created by God and is unique and has value. I had a very interesting experience this morning down in the rotunda. I was talking to a colleague. The Reverend Jesse Jackson walked up. I'd never met him. I'd seen him on television. I'd heard a lot about him. I shook his hand, and it just occurred to me, I remember that the Reverend Jackson used to be pro-life. I looked up an article that the Reverend Jackson wrote. I want to quote from some of it. "The question of abortion confronts me in several different ways. First, although I do not profess to be a biologist, I've studied biology and know something about life from the point of view of the natural sciences. Second, I'm a minister of the gospel and therefore feel that abortion has a religious and moral dimension that I must consider. And third, I was born out of wedlock and against the advice that my mother received from her doctor, and therefore abortion is a personal issue for me. From my perspective, human life is the highest good. Human life itself is the highest human good, and God is the supreme good because He is the giver of life. That is my philosophy. Everything I do proceeds from that religious and philosophical premise." Reverend Jackson went on. "In the abortion debate, one of the crucial questions is, when does life begin? Anything growing is living. Therefore, human life begins when the sperm and egg join and drop into the fallopian tube and the pulsation of life takes place. From that point, life may be described differently. But the essence is the same. The name has changed, but the game remains the same. Now, some argue, suppose the woman doesn't want to have the baby. They say the very fact that she does not want the baby means that the psychological damage to the child is reason enough to abort the baby. Reverend Jackson said he disagreed. The solution to that problem is not to kill the innocent baby, but to deal with her values and her attitude toward life. Deal with the attitude that would allow her to take away that which she cannot give. Some women argue that the man does not have the baby and will not be responsible for the baby after it is born. Therefore, it is all right to kill the baby. Again, the logic is off. The premise is that the man is irresponsible. If that is the problem, then deal with making him responsible. Deal with what you're dealing with, not the weak, the innocent, and the unprotected baby." He went on. You could look up his article. There's more to say. I'm sure other speakers will have more to say. I want to conclude, but I want to ask this body, do you even know what you're voting on? How many of you ever have seen an abortion? When I think of some of the travesties throughout human history, from slavery, basically since the camera was invented, we've had a window into some of the grave injustices in the world. I have in my mind the image of the former slave with the scars born on his back. I have images of bodies stacked like cordwood in World War II. And I have the images of those children. I read a powerful book recently, The Blood of Emmett Till. Do you know this story? Emmett Till was brutally murdered in the South. His body was sent north to Chicago. His mother insisted that he have an open casket so that the world would see what was done to him. This is not just euphemisms that we're talking about. This is a child. At some point, a mother goes to an abortion clinic. She is pregnant, and hours later, she is unpregnant, if you want to call it that. What happens in the interim? If you're going to vote yes on this, do you have the courage to look at those images and vote yes? I would beg the body, please vote no.
Representative Christian Mitchell is recognized.